Previously on Lemon, we talked about s1mple's absolute domination during the year of 2018, why he's widely considered to be the best player of all time because of this year. We also talked about some of the highs as well as some of the lows of his team during that year. 2019 was an absolutely disappointing year for s1mple. I'ma be real. I'm s1mple's #1 fan. So watching this year as his fan was really frustrating. Now that s1mple's returned to competitive play, we're gonna talk about 2019 and why it pissed a lot of fans off, and also why it cemented another great player as potentially being better than s1mple, even though, let's be real, he's not. But we'll get to that right after. 2019 was kicked off by probably the most heartbreaking tournament I have watched s1mple play ever. It was IEM Katowice 2019. Going into this tournament, the clear favorites were Astralis. After all, they had just dominated the entirety of 2018. But they were upset just before this tournament by Team Liquid. And if Team Liquid could beat Astralis, surely Navi could. It was all going according to plan, and we thought that we were going to see a rematch of the Face It Major final. And that was until Alexi called a masterclass against Navi. This series was so frustrating. When people refer to s1mple 1v9ing, this series is what they're talking about. s1mple is famous from this series for a clutch that he didn't win. There's not a lot of players that are famous for a clutch that they didn't win. At that point, you're only talking about Nico in 2024 missing that 1v5. Regardless, I watched this clutch attempt live and it broke my heart. You can see the absolute pain in s1mple's face and the realization that he just lost the series to ENCE. As soon as that round is over, the series is done. There's no way that Navi is going to be able to make it back in. And this video is going to get heartbreaking because that was the peak of 2019 for Navi. Granted, right after the major, they ended up winning a tournament. It was Star Series Season 7. It wasn't a bad tournament win, but we knew that roster changes were coming, so this Navi team was basically a dead team, and they didn't face the toughest competition. The issue that s1mple faced this year that not a lot of players would be able to survive at the level that he did was roster instability, which is such a stupid reason for this year to go so south, especially when this player is in his prime. Granted, they were better off because of it later on as the years went on, but this year still happened, unfortunately, and I wish it didn't. So you have two members of Navi who are contemplating retirement or gonna get kicked or fired. Edward ended up getting kicked, and Zeus has been contemplating retirement since 2018. The fact that he even came back to Navi instead of retiring after Gambit was insane because he was the oldest player in the world at the time. So upon kicking Edward, they ended up picking up Boomich to replace him. Boomich didn't play bad, but Zeus was still on the roster because he was training Boomich to become the IGL. This just didn't make sense for a number of reasons. Because at the time, Navi had Blade as an analyst. Blade, we all know now, is a legendary coach, but back then he didn't necessarily have the clout that he does now. Looking back, it was so obvious he should have just been moved to coach immediately, and Zeus should have been gone as soon as Edward was gone. But we had this weird period in the middle of the year where Navi wasn't going to tournaments, was playing with the dead lineup, was basically using a stand-in, and Zeus was calling bullshit. That didn't stop s1mple from playing fucking crazy though. This entire era of Navi was garbage, but s1mple was still managing to play his heart out despite all of the roster instability. And that speaks to the level that this guy was capable of. In the meantime, while s1mple was dealing with all these problems on his team, there was another player who was rising up rapidly. His name was Zywoo. And Zywoo is a fraud. I'm a s1mple truther. I need to tell you the straight facts. The reason why is because Zywoo had help. The team structure set up around Zywoo has been consistently better than s1mple for pretty much Zywoo's entire career. There have always been teammates constantly support flashing for him, doing bait plays, running in first so that way he could get the trade and get the clutch. Zywoo was talented, don't get me wrong, but he is not s1mple. s1mple did not have any of that. He had Zeus, who would buy an AK and then tell s1mple to take a deagle. That's two different team styles. One team, you're giving your best player the best weapon. The other team, you're giving your best player shit because you think that that's going to help the team because you believe that he can do more with less. Looking back, it's obvious that Zywoo should have just dropped AKs to s1mple. It's obvious that these players should have just entried out with a Mac 10 and just died so that way s1mple could get the trade. But that was something that Vitality did really well this year. That was something that they defined the meta for later on. So can I confidently say that Zywoo was a better player than s1mple when s1mple just had less to work with but still posted the numbers that he did? No, I can't. Now, during the middle of this year, we actually did start to see something entirely different from s1mple that we had never seen before. s1mple had always been a hybrid player. He was fantastic with the op, he was fantastic with the rifles. During this year, there was an emerging meta where you would use the COD guns, the AUG, the Krieg. You would use these guns because basically they were overpowered as shit. One of the only mistakes I would say Blade has ever made with Navi was picking up Guardian towards the end of 2019. Now Guardian, great player, washed. He was washed up at this time. Blade thought it was a good idea and would make s1mple a better player who was more versatile by putting him on the Krieg while signing Guardian to take over the op duties. This was a bad play for multiple reasons. One, Guardian just couldn't hang with the GOAT. Not only that, he also couldn't just hang in tier 1. He wasn't the same player he was the year before. Not only that, but you're also taking the best weapon in the game off the best player in the game. So naturally, his stats just went down, and he also had less impact. Meanwhile, Zywoo was basically just farming the whole year. A lot of times he was playing in qualifiers against lower opposition. He was playing fucking Furia in the final of the tournament they won. Furia. No, I'm gonna say it a third time. Furia. Like, we can't take this seriously. I'm sorry. But this role change towards the end of the year is what I think gave Zywoo the edge over s1mple when people started looking back at 2019. s1mple, like I said earlier, just wasn't at tournaments like he was before. He wasn't at the biggest events. There were certain events that they skipped. We saw the two Titans clash in DreamHack Malmö 2019. Vitality versus Navi. We got to see them finally face off. So what was it like? Both players were battling constantly, finding little edges that they could get over each other. It was a real dirty game in terms of the CS being played. But ultimately, Navi taking the loss to Vitality here and sending Vitality to the final is what killed 2019 for s1mple. In the first half of the year, he was playing with dead lineups and he wasn't playing a lot of tournaments. In the second half of the year, he was playing with a brand new IGL, a washed up opper, in a role that he had never played before, with a brand new coach. He was kind of set up to fail. So how was he top 2? Yo, answer me this. With all of those problems that I just listed for Navi, how was s1mple top 2? And that goes to show the incredible work ethic that s1mple put in. s1mple, when he was told to become a rifler, he didn't complain, he didn't argue, he went straight to work. You saw in the FPL games that he was playing, he was maining the Krieg, he stopped opping. s1mple has a true grind mentality. He doesn't stop just because he's not comfortable. He's willing to push his own boundaries. s1mple, we traditionally think of as an opper, was out rifling Nico this year. So what that tells me is that s1mple's B game means that he's a top 2 player ever, and he's not number 2. But I will give credit to Zywoo. He hits the shots where it matters. He was just randomly dropping 30 bombs. Like, you wouldn't see it in the game, but he would be just climbing the scoreboard every single round. He wasn't as flashy as s1mple, which goes back to what I said in the last video. You want to op like Device, not like s1mple. When you op like s1mple, you're taking a lot more risks. You're doing a lot more stupid shit, but it works just because he is who he is and he practiced that shit. So while Zywoo was playing kind of boring Counter-Strike, he was hitting every single shot. If you're the type of player when you play CS that you just hit every shot, you don't go for the crazy plays. You just hit every single op shot that you have, you're doing your job and you're gonna become a great CS player, especially if your team knows how to play off of you. He played a very predictable style, but that didn't mean teams could stop him just because you jiggle peek the angle and then you're dead. That's what made Zywoo so dangerous, and for a lot of people made him a better player than s1mple. Now, as a s1mple truther, I think Zywoo is actually a choker. But we didn't really get to see too much of that because there was a lot less pressure on Zywoo than there is now. Zywoo wasn't expected to perform in the biggest events. He wasn't expected to be in the final of ESL 1 Cologne. So when he was magically, I mean, most of the community thought he has to be better than s1mple. It's just a shame we didn't get to see s1mple in the deepest runs this year. He made a couple semifinals, he won a tournament against lower opposition. So I can concede to a lot of people that Zywoo was better this year. But 2020 was absolutely fraudulent from beginning to end. I just kind of wanted to make a quick little video about 2019. I feel like it wasn't as big as what I'm about to talk about in the online era. If you enjoyed this video, feel free to like and subscribe. I really do appreciate you guys for sticking around with me. I know I'm super inconsistent and I know I'm not the best YouTuber ever, but like your support always means a lot to me. If you want a chance to have your comment pinned at the end of the video, feel free to leave a comment down below on what you thought about this video, and I may pin it towards the end of next video. I love you guys. Stay safe. Peace.